Yeah, true. But and again, it's very, very messy. And also in terms of what goes on in your mind, if you're halfway through this, you at some point go, this doesn't work. What did I get myself into? Also feels familiar? There's always this low point. You know, well, lean startup might save you at that point or not. But you know, if you know that this is the process, what can lean startup do? So we thought we knew that, right? And by now, we realized that there was something important about the reasons why startups fail. So we looked at this graph and say, see, we should teach people about lean startup because then they won't make the mistake anymore that they build something people don't want, right? That's number one reason, no market need. Or running out of cash, like, oh, we got quite far, but no more money, game's over. But then if we looked at this and we compared it to when we coached, I've coached over 100 startup founders of a variety of size, like scale-ups and up until like corporate innovators. And I compared this stat with what I saw really was happening. I was like, the real reason here is number 3, like they're not doing it right. Or they're not in the right mindset, or they haven't got the right team. Because the other 2 is basically blaming what went wrong after the fact. Like, okay, so yeah, okay, we locked ourselves up in a room for a year, came out with this product, yeah, market wasn't ready. Or, yeah, no investors wanted to fund this. It was a great idea, we had no money. But that's not something you have in hand, right? It's not something you control. So we started to look at lean startup and think like, so we should teach people about this, how they do this. And we found that the real reasons why people fail at a startup is actually because how they operate. And the most common one is that they're completely wrong about how to approach this. So I tell people about lean startup and they go, yeah, so it's a great way for me to prove I'm right. Sort of what I get back. It's like, no, that's actually not the point. But they hope really sincerely that it's, as long as they can keep pushing a certain idea in certain directions that have no merit, they might find that they were right. And that's the wrong way of looking at this. Or I have loads and loads, I've met loads and loads of business people that say, I've started a software company. So guess, who's your CTO? We don't have one. Who's building the product? We don't know yet. Okay. So, but that's pretty crucial to have that in your team. Yeah, we'll figure that out. All right, sure. Well, it can be done, but that's going to be a little bit harder than if you would have like an additional founder that can build stuff. Or they are in completely the wrong industry. They want to be in healthcare but have no idea what that market or the industry looks like. And most importantly, depending on how much basically runway you have, let's say how much life savings you have, or inside a large company, how much like momentum you have with your manager, for example, to keep trying. You're going to be complacent. You're going to write a very thick business plan. You're going to lock yourself up for 6 months to build the first MVP, which is a 6-month project. Like, okay, that is not the point of MVPs. And after 6 months, you get your first insight. Yeah, we showed this to customers. It was finally ready. The MVP was ready. Nobody cared. Well, that's it. Why didn't they care? Well, it turns out we had to build the thing on mobile. Do you have to take 6 months to find that out? Really? I had this literally with a startup founder. Locked himself up for 6 months. Launched it, and then everybody complained that it wasn't working on mobile. Had to start completely over. Could have done this by simply publishing the download link and checking out what browsers people were using. Like, could have done this in a day, finds it out in 6 months. So we realized this, or sometimes this is a bit loud apparently. We realized that this is something we had to fix instead. But we found this out by initially telling people how Lean Startup works. Like, okay, so here's the book, here's what we do with Lean Startup. Here's basically an exercise like the Marshmallow Challenge. Anyone has an experience with doing the Marshmallow Challenge? Yeah? So, for those who don't know it, it's like you have a bunch of spaghetti and a marshmallow and you put it on top at the end. Or most people put it on top in the end, but that's the purpose of like failure of the test. Because you're supposed to build this tall stranding structure in 20 minutes. And then the marshmallow has to stay on top. And we now use this as an assessment tool to see how people operate. But initially it was like, it's a fun exercise to introduce people to Lean Startup. Question for those who did it, who got the exercise. What is the point of the marshmallow? What does the marshmallow represent? You say project, you say customer problem. Anyone wants to add something to that? test and learn. The whole process is test and learn, because you're right, it's the customer. In my favorite example is the customer. So basically it happens in real life. You start building the product, has to be great, has to be built up, and then basically you plan for 6 months because you get 6 months of runway, and then now we're ready and we're going to show it to the customer. And the customer says, what the hell is this? You know, and then what happens in the Marshmallow challenge, you put the marshmallow on top, and it doesn't stay on top, it starts to fall down. But by the time it falls down, it destroys everything in its path. So basically, involving your customer too late makes you feel so grandiose that you can't try again. And in the challenge, we teach people that you should put this marshmallow on top from the very start and keep building up until a tall standing structure. And then, of course, next to that, we had loads and loads and loads of canvases. And we gave them to people saying, this is the business model canvas, let's fill them in. They did that, and we come back after a couple of weeks and say, so you filled in the canvas? Yeah, we did that. So, and what happened next? Well, nothing. Okay, why not? Well, we thought we were done when we filled in the canvas. All right, cool. So what happened to all the assumptions on the canvas? Oh, these are assumptions. Oh yeah, we should probably do something with that. So we're like puzzled, like, okay, so you don't teach people how they do the startup. They can figure this out by themselves. You should teach them why they should use it and how they should expand their tool set so they can pick the things they need if they're convinced that the most precious asset they have is the time and the way they operate as a team. That's what matters. By the way, I'm going to try and open this in the meantime. I need a sip of water. So, it also counters a lot of objections I got from workshops. So I'd use an example about Mark Zuckerberg, how he got through his first experiments. I get people in the back of the room, sorry if you're in the back of the room right now. Mark Zuckerberg didn't do lean startup. Like, no, probably didn't even hear of it because it wasn't existing when Mark Zuckerberg did Facebook, or the earliest version of Facebook. But it's about the mindset. He didn't experiment. He had an epiphany about it. He used it basically in his business. Can anyone tell me what experiment Mark Zuckerberg did that gave him the insight that helped him build Facebook? Anyone? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think he called it face mesh. So, face mesh was like a version of hot or not, and then, but it was showing people off campus in Harvard. And then his laptop started to burn off of all the traffic he got on the laptop. But he made a realization doing that experiment. People are more engaged to meeting people they already know online than new people. And by that time, it was like totally new idea in social networks. So he started to build a social network for meeting people you already know on campus in Harvard. That was the starting point. And we all know the rest of that, how that went. But that crucial first insight kicked this whole thing off. And I use it as an example so I can teach people, like, this is the mindset of founders, right? They do these experiments, they observe, they talk to customers to really get into the hard part of understanding the customer and finding something that is hard to find in another way. So, and they do that fast. They do rapid experimentation. They don't sit still for 6 months and shipping nothing or not engaging with any kind of customer in any way. They do this fast, they do this often. They use the build, measure, learn loop in one way or another, but it's more of like a mindset thing. Like I have to be, knowing that what I'm doing is going to make sense. There's literally a talk from Drew Houston of Dropbox who says that, like, I was coding for 2 weeks. Same thing with Joel Casco of Pepper. I was coding for 2 weeks. I wanted to know for sure that I was going to make an impact with what I was about to do. So in order to find the answers, I'm going to reach out to customers. I'm going to learn. And then I'm going to build something, and I'm going to be checking if I was right. So not build, measure, learn. Learning comes first. You have a plan, you have assumptions. Let's test them, let's build something to test those. And then you measure whether or not you're right. And don't try to guess it, just try to be sure that what you thought was true is actually true through some data you collect. Keep things simple. You have to get good at this. That's also what we help founders with. You have to get good at it, so do a simple experiment first with your team to get the gist of this mode of thinking and operating. And then you start making it more complex, maybe more experiments at the same time. maybe even a split test or some sort, or an optimization tactic on your landing page. But first, let's keep it simple. And the point of doing that is that you want to go out and find the thing that naturally works for you. You want to look for a downhill facing battle. This guy, Derek Siver, was great at explaining that. And his story is interesting as well. He wrote a book called Anything You Want. But his original company he created, he didn't create it because he wanted to. It just happened. And I like that. And one of his other quotes is like, you should only build a company if people ask you to do that. That's interesting. So in his case, he was playing a band. Have anyone seen or heard of Derek Siver before? Yeah, you did? So you know the story? You know his blog post? Okay. You heard of the company called CD Baby? Okay, so that was his first company. But he was owner of a band. And he wanted to sell his CDs. He was proud of the music he made. Goes to the store, says, hey, I have some CDs. Do you want to put this in your store? And the store owner says, no. And he says, oh, why not? Well, I take them from a distributor. Oh, so I go to the distributor? Yeah, try that. But that's going to be hard because they have deals with record labels. And he was like, oh, I just made a copy of a bunch of CDs. I just want to sell them. So I can't go to a distributor for that. So I'll sell them online instead. So he started making some website with PayPal back in 1997 when this was like pretty hard to get done. And but before he knew it, he got a call from a friend saying, okay, you're selling CDs online, your own CDs? Yeah. Can you put mine up as well? Oh yeah, sure, I can do that. So he did that. And then another friend comes, with a band. And then all of a sudden you get phone calls from people saying, hey, I heard from Matt that you do this thing where you sell CDs online. Can you do that for me? He's like, yeah, I'll probably have to charge you money for it. By that time, he was like really curious to find out why this was happening. But then that was the birth of his company. He didn't have to do anything. People just pulled the product out of his hands. And, it was like a $200 million company at some point. But never, ever did he try to push something that wasn't working. So the gist of Lean Startup is to stop wasting people's time. And it boils down to learn early, learn often. Try to spend your time on learning. If you don't do that, that's the waste in the Lean Startup process. Like, Lean is about eliminating waste. The waste in Lean Startup is not learning. And to keep things simple and to keep things like actionable, try to work in small batches. So keep things comprehensible, keep it small, especially because you're looking for strong signals. If you have 10 people and you're going to ask them whether or not they have this problem you think they have, and you have to talk to 10 people, that's easy to do, that's fast to do. And you should see that at least 5 of them in your early adopter groups that have that problem. So don't interview 100 people initially, just interview a few and see what happens. See what comes naturally. And for that, we have the learn and confirm framework. Once you find something you've learned through Signal, I'll get to that, you can try to think of an experiment that proves that, right? That confirms a thing on like a more, let's say, quantitative scale. And if you do that and you get into the green box here, then you've done some validated learning. Some people tell you something, and you confirm it through an experiment. Tristan Kromer also has this idea. If you look up his blogs, he calls the left side explorative research, and the right side he calls confirmation experiments. And it basically boils down to, okay, people tell you stuff, but do they do as they say in real life? Or I have loads and loads of possible customers I can talk to, or segments. I'm going to explore all the options I have here to get a little bit of a feel of where I should start. And once I see something is really working, I'm going to do a test to see if I'm really right about this. Also helps you prevent the so-called local maximum trap, picking a customer segment that doesn't reflect a big market size. And then the bottom line is, you get signals of all sorts. Could also be, let's say, industry expert opinions, research online, data, and then you try to run an experiment that proves basically these strong signals. So if you are building an MVP, your first customers are going to pay the bill for it. You solve their problem, the solution is purchased. That's evidence, and that might mean that you have problem-solution fit. And you iterate through this. So the first thing that matters in any business model is what kind of assumptions are there, and which ones are the riskiest ones that are going to basically destroy my plan. So test those first. And yeah, you can brainstorm how you can test them, right? So anything goes. Anything from customer interviews to doing data research to doing a smoke test or a landing page could do the job for you. You plan them, you keep them comprehensible, make sure they run for a couple of weeks, look at the results, see if you have another risky assumption, see if you can scale up a bit, see if this thing starts to turn into a small version of the company you're about to create. And if not, you switch to another customer segment, or you do whatever is needed to get to a better plan, a plan B or a plan C, and start from step one again. And one of the things that I noticed in the past years is that there's a category of assumptions that the founders or the corporate entrepreneurs that I help forget to think about. It's like, how do you grow this? So you can think of like, I know what the problem my customer has. I know how the solution fixes the problem. I know who those customers sort of are. I can build a persona, lovely, even. But then the next question is, so how much is it going to cost you to get that customer through your door? Oh, wait. So, no, we do a viral campaign. They'll come to us because the previous customer tells you so. Right. So, does that work? We don't know yet. Okay. So, do we have a way to find that out? We could try this, yes. Okay, so now there's a growth assumption. Your marketing cost is going to be low because you're going to grow virally. Let's put that down as an assumption. And actually, this could be wrong. I mean, initially, this is a story known from Dropbox that they thought you can just acquire the customers on AdWords, and then they did the math, and they were paying $300 per customer to get them, and they were getting $100 per year of revenue from them. Now you have a problem with your growth because you can't pay that kind of money for that kind of customer. So now you have to think of a different way to grow your company. And this happens a lot in the exercises I do with founders. Really calculating what it costs to grow. Also cash flow wise. So if you can get a good profit of each customer you get in and they pay in advance, that's totally different for your cash flow needs than if they pay you monthly and it takes you 12 months to recover the revenue you've invested in terms of marketing. So it's crucial to have some assumptions about growth as well. And then there's this guy, Steve Blank, famous for his quote, "Get out of the building." But this is the more correct version of it. Like, no facts inside the building, so you have to get the heck outside. Steve kicked off an entire wave, obviously. Even before Lean Startup was an official thing, his customer development book was already out. And his this adagium came out and he said, like, okay, so you have to go outside. This is his personal experience as well as an entrepreneur. And people did that. And obviously, people like me were telling this to entrepreneurs, like, you can't stay inside to build this product, you have to go outside. Okay, so people did that, and they started to talk to people all the time. But then most of them actually turned this into a checkbox thing. So really, Robert, you have to go out and talk to customers? Yeah, you should do that. And you should see if, customers have the problem you think they have. Okay, you've done that. Now can I go back and build the product? Yeah, no. So what came out of it? Yeah, no. They liked my product. Okay, so you did talk to customers, but you didn't ask them the right questions. No, I showed them the product. They liked it. Did they buy it? Not yet. No. Okay, that doesn't seem right to me. But turns out it's not a checkbox item. It's these are the common mistakes, basically. You're going to reach out to customers, then you're going to pitch them your product, and you say, this is the problem you fix. And your customers say, yeah, I have that problem. Yeah. And then you come back to them and say, so you want to buy it? No. But you have this problem. Yeah, I do. So you want to solve that? Not today, no. I've got different things on my mind. Come back in a month or so. It's like, okay, come back in a month. So now it's an important problem? Still not. Still, these other 3 problems are still bigger, sorry. Or, I get this problem. Yeah, I'm going to call my boss. I'm going to tell him that this is a great product. So, and you call back. Like, so, what did your boss say? Oh, no, I didn't talk to my boss. Didn't get to it. Okay. And then next time. So, did you talk to it? Yeah, there's no budget. So, sorry, can you give it for me for free? I can try it. Okay, there's no budget? No. I literally started finally saying, so you done a pilot with BMW? Yeah, we did. So, and how much did they pay? Nothing. They paid nothing? No, they paid nothing. So, are they going to pay you something? We don't know. You don't know? So who will pay? Which department? We don't know. You don't know, really. Who would you think would pay? Perhaps the safety department. Have you talked to the safety department of this company? No, we did not. Who did you talk to? The innovation manager. And they didn't pay? Nope. My advice of you to find out who has money for your product. And they were like, yeah, sounds like a smart thing to do. Do it now. BMW is no longer their customer. Or it never has been, in fact. But they learned at least. And that's the big thing. You might ignore better options and patterns. Like, I've had people have a thesis about selling a new product to single moms, getting some data in by running an online experiment. Looks good. 10% conversion. Wow, that's high. And then one lady in the team goes, but we also have something very interesting on this side here. What is that? That is 20% conversion. Are these also single moms? No, they're not. So, why is that converting? We don't know. Do you want to find out? No, you're right about the single moms. We're going to go with the single moms. Really? Are you going to do that? Yeah, we're going to do that. And then it come back saying, oh, well, we still wanted to look at the other data because we were curious. Turns out male singles were actually converting much better if they're living in a dense city. Okay, so are you going to switch to this other segment? Yes, we are. Thank you. And they were far more successful afterwards. And there's not only one thing you need to solve, this problem solved, right? So you can talk to customers about problems they have, but what about how they buy? What about whether or not they have budget? What about the amount of money they can spend in the first place? What if they are your customer? What's going to make them happy once they have the product? So you need to ask more questions than just validating a problem to be solved. And more importantly, and this is also literally from a coaching session I had maybe less than a couple of weeks ago, there's this lady who's making a new food product. And she wants to, like, say, work with restaurants to bring that to the market. And the restaurant owners are excited. They're excited about what she does. She gets good results from engaging with these customers. And then she says to me, yeah, and I got some requests from people that wanted to see if they can buy some of this stuff. So that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. So, have you sold any? No. Why not? I'm not ready yet. You're not ready yet? No. But you think these people are going to wait until you're ready? Yeah. I was going to go out now and just, So if you go back to them, let's say in a month from now, these are restaurant owners. They get a new pitch like this every month. Next month, they're going to spend their money on the next thing that comes about that they find interesting. Why don't you take their money right now and tell them you'll serve them later? She was like, no, can't do that. No, I can't do that. Okay. No, I just want to have the product finished first. And I'll get back to them once they're ready. And once I'm ready. And I go back to her after a couple of weeks. So what happened to all those leads? Yeah, I tried to follow up with some of them. They're not calling back. See? This is the momentum of sales. You have their attention now. You might lose their attention later. Turns out we moved away from some of the other things we do with customer development, and we do job-to-be-done research, primarily because it's a more broad coverage of all the things you need to figure out when it comes to how your customers think and operate. It discovers the unmet needs, but it also identifies, let's say, your real competitor. So there's a famous example of Clayton Christensen about the milkshake, and that he learns through this exercise that the actual competitor for milkshake, at least in the United States, is a banana. And I'll encourage you, those who don't know this example, to look it up online, why the banana is competing with the milkshake. Has something to do with how people eat breakfast in the car. But you also can see whether or not you are serving a market that is in need of some sort of disruption on price versus a premium market that you serve better with a better product. As well as understanding how customers buy. We've done a session with a startup who's building a photo booth for green screen photo booth setup for weddings, for example, or other parties. And they want to see if they could rent it out to wedding planners as part of the wedding. We could recreate this job map, saying, so how do wedding planners plan their wedding, all the steps they take. And one of the steps they take is buying the wedding cake. So maybe there's a big analogy between how they select the wedding cake they buy and what they do to get that. And how they're going to find and select your product. Like maybe it's online, maybe they know a friend. let's go into that analogy and see what you can learn. Like, what do you find important in terms of branding and how the website looks, etc., etc. So they use that. They get all these kinds of insights on how people buy instead of fix a problem. And it mixes very well with the MOM test, for example, and design thinking, because the MOM test is a very smart way of asking the right questions, and design thinking is a very good way of preparing part of this work you need to do and diverting a bit into multiple directions, and then solving the problem thoroughly. And then this is like the final part, a little bit of my talk. How much time do I have left, by the way? I didn't see any questions come through yet, so we'll get to a Q&A later. How much time do I have? Okay, cool. There's also a situation where you might be, doing the actual like hard work with like interviewing customers, building an MVP, and experimenting. But from time to time, you also have to go back to the total potential of what you're doing in the long run. The strategy, the potential, the market size, the industry you're in, etc., etc. This gentleman, John Mullins, Professor John Mullins, wrote 2 books I really, really use a lot to help founders and other corporate entrepreneurs understand, let's say, the bigger picture that comes with this. And this is called the New Business Road Test, as well as Customer-Funded Business. So the New Business Road Test contains a model in there that's called the 7 Domains model, which I'm going to explain in the next slide. And Customer-Funded Business shows you operating models from how to get, for, say, some first money from your customers, exactly, not so much from investors, to build the business upon. And for example, one of them is service the product. You first operate your service as a consulting business, for example, take some money, use it to fund the product development. That's just one of the 5 examples. And in that way, you already have early proof that what you're doing is worth something to customers. And you can postpone, basically, early stage investment because your customers are funding it. Firmhouse is doing that, actually. We are building an experimentation as a service platform, which helps, let's say, large companies run experiments really fast. And our first customers are paying us pilot fees and license fees in advance, so we can build the thing. So it can be done. And then, so from time to time, you have to combine all the micro-level stuff you do by talking to customers with the bigger picture. So the 7 domains model of John Mullins is great for that. So you go back to this as a frame of reference from time to time. It contains all sorts of crucial elements, not so much only, let's say, the lean startup experimentation stuff you need to get done on the micro level, but also, like, what are my big industry trends? But also the question, like, how do I protect my business when it's growing? Like, can I patent stuff or those kinds of things? Or do I get a lock-in through data I collect from the customers or something like that? And if I know this, what does my team need to do to be successful in the long run? And those are often elements that you do not really tackle strictly in lean startup, but you do have to think of them from time to time. So in the programs we coached in, or the programs we designed ourselves, we have these like retrospective moments saying, okay, so now this customer segment has some things going on. Let's go back. Let's see how big the total market actually is. Let's dig into some market data. Let's call industry experts. Let's see what they think of this now that we have this proof. And then, that always helps them like reflect on, okay, so the plan was this. The industry is gravitating towards another industry trend. This either helps us or doesn't help us. And then you can like really consider whether you want to push that particular option forward and grow a company out of it. Now, to close this off with some examples of what it really looks like in real life, either, let's say, from what I've studied as examples or what I've experienced myself. Oh, sorry. This one, I like this one. This is the first product Microsoft made. Does it look like software to you? It is. It is code. It's code on a tape. It's very old. But Microsoft's first product wasn't an operating system at all. Their first business was to actually make basic interpreters for PC pioneers, companies like Ricoh, who just paid Bill and his colleagues, Paul Allen, for example, just say, listen, I'm going to give you $50,000. I need a basic interpreter, and I want the IP. And Paul Allen and Bill Gates would do that. And, check signed, got paid, and moved on to the next project, which was, again, a basic interpreter, for example. But one day, by doing that, they got some industry knowledge about, what was coming. And they got a phone call from IBM saying, listen, guys, I don't need a basic interpreter this time. I need an operating system. Can you do that too? And then Bill's like, well, yeah, we can do that too. But Bill realized, like, listen, this is the moment of truth. We're not going to sell it to you. We're going to license it to you if that's okay with you. And IBM was like, well, sounds like a fair deal. Let's do it. And then he already knows that his neighbor actually built the operating system he needs. So he walks over and buys the operating system from Seattle Computer Products instead of building it. But he knew exactly what to do because he was in the middle of the industry. And people have forgotten this part of the history of Microsoft. It wasn't that they came up with this operating system from the start. They were already in a certain position to assess that this was the next big thing they could do. And they took it. And this one is interesting. Basecamp. Who've used Basecamp? It's interesting to see that the first product of Basecamp was a white paper. An information product. Just to learn from what it takes to sell something to customers. I'm going to write something, I'm going to set it out there for $79 and see who buys. See if these are our customers that buy into our vision. Interesting job. And then, not just by making the point of making money, but also by learning something from customers. Like, this is the stuff that some people try to do just to make some bankrolling and some money. You have some examples like Airbnb, with the Obama O's back then, to make some money and to keep things going. Or there's guys out there like Elon Musk that sell flamethrowers. You know, it's not a product you end up with doing, but it brings you in some money. But in this particular case, it also validated that the customers they were serving were the customers they also wanted to serve with the software, without actually having to build the software. And this is also an interesting one. This is the first version of WhatsApp. So WhatsApp initially was a status app. So the only thing you could do with WhatsApp is to set your status, like, hey, I'm having lunch. And then your friends would see, oh, Robert is having lunch. That's nice. No. Do you think that's a good app? Who thinks that's a great app? Oh, okay, few people still. Did you use the first version of WhatsApp? Okay. So yes, two hands go up, but it didn't use it, so that's like a 0 in validation. But he was playing around with this technology. Yeah, by now I think it's more custom than back then. Like, but there's a whole talk from Janku online about this on the startup class website from Y Combinator, where he literally says, like, listen, the only thing I was doing right is to hack myself back into the App Store every time again to get some momentum and going to get people to download the stuff. But people were not using the app. He knew that he had a problem, but he was just playing around. He had some time. He was like, he was making sure that he could see whether or not it was working or not. And one day, Apple publishes a push notification option in their SDK. He was like, huh, that's an interesting thing to play around with. I'm now going to send everyone a push notification of your friends if you're changing the status. So basically, people get now a message saying, literally on your phone, oh, Robert is having lunch. Thank you for interrupting me. You know, that doesn't work. But what turned out is that he shipped it. People started to abuse that feature to send messages to groups of people. And I was like, huh. Well, we could also just turn this into a messaging app. Now you know how history went down, right? This was a massive success. But only because he tried something first, looked at what customers really did with the software, and then changed it. And then there's away travel. Ladies who really did lots of interviews before they came up with these suitcases. These are nice sturdy suitcases that come, for example, with the option to charge your phone with a USB cable. I really like it. But they started out by just interviewing customers about travel and all the problems they have with travel. Then they started to sell the first units via pre-orders or some sort of Kickstarter campaign before they started to like ship it big. And now they've sold over 100,000 suitcases. And in their press release, when they raised their Series B investment, it was a massive round, they literally like confessed that Lean Startup was a thing for them that changed, let's say, the way they worked and was part of their success. And then there's these guys from the Netherlands, I'm a small investor in, wanted to build an electrical scooter, but didn't actually build anything. They initially just set the sales funnel before anything else. But not only did they do that, if they would get feedback from people that did not buy the scooter, for example, there was an incident where they had people say, I only buy the scooter if it has a low windshield on it. And then they would go like, so this is interesting feedback. Is this something we need to like put into the product or not? And instead of just doing that, they would go out and walk around the streets of Amsterdam and just count the number of scooters with low windshields on them. And they found that very few people have them. So they said, okay, this feedback of this particular customer, we can safely dismiss this because it's not true. Not everyone needs a low windshield. But they also found stuff that is, like say, appealing to most customers. This scooter can contain like a crate of beer inside. Good feature for their target group. And so they made the sales funnel work before everything else, and only when they got the first couple of pre-orders in consistently, they started to actually develop the scooter. And then there's a project we did together with a big bank, where we wanted to research what really was problematic about international money transfer. There's companies like TransferWise that do this very, very cleverly. But this team wanted to really understand what was like cumbersome for people in international money transfers. And one thing that stood out is that if you are a business owner of a small business and you have a couple of remote suppliers, paying them is apparently very, very painful. And they found through interviews that that whole process is very messy. You start paying, you have to wait for a couple of days for your vendor or your supplier to confirm that they received the payment. Turns out that a hefty bank fee was raised over, but you don't know how much it is. And your supplier says, listen, I am short $50. I can't start building this for you. And then they had to do transactions, and they had to like exchange screenshots that the money was basically transferred. And we're like, this sounds like something you can fix. And then they started campaigning around that, and it's basically the result. They had very high conversion rates on this landing page. From going to understanding the real pain the customer went through to get them to click, and then offering them something to start transferring fast or cheap. This is exactly the transparency the customer is looking for. So that was like hugely successful. It was even so much successful that bank realized that their operating margins on international transfers would be killed if they had actually launched this. So they killed this because they realized that it would be a cannibalization of their revenues. But then my argument was like, listen guys, you can do this either yourself or the next startup comes along and does this for you. So what do you want? Do you want like smaller revenues or no revenues at all? For now, they opted for no revenues at all. Point being, we're here to expand your tool set so you can like pick what you need. You can't do this without trying it yourself. Like really go in there, go into the ring and have these fights. Because you're trying to learn it from watching a Bruce Lee movie, like with Kung Fu. I tried Kung Fu myself. It's really hard in real life to actually do proper Kung Fu. There's no point in getting to the level where Bruce Lee is. Watching his movie is nonsense. You have to do this yourself. And you know, in our experience, once you do it yourself, it gets into your head what's working and what's not. And you can make this your own, make this your craft, and be a good entrepreneur, and perhaps be successful. And that's all I had. Do we have some time for questions? You mean 8 questions or 8 minutes? Okay, 8 questions. Who has a question for me? See one in the back right there.
Yes, so basically what you would advise to startup ongoing start with some kind of job methodology, and then once he has a clear idea of what the real customer problem is, then switch to a design thinking method.
Yes and no. I like your thinking. Like I pick the method I think might work, brings me the insight, and then I'm going to apply design thinking. Could be. I've seen situations where I thought, now is the time I'll use design thinking. Like if you have some idea about problems and possible solutions for customers, yeah, you could do like this design sprint, and then it gives you like some interesting outcomes, and then you go back to the customer and sell that basically output from the design sprint. Yeah, it's possible, but sometimes it's also, you know, depending on what part of design thinking you want to bring in first, because design thinking also gives you a lot of prep work, like personas and those kinds of things. And things like personas and mapping that out also helps you prepare for, okay, so how do I recognize whether or not this is actually a potential early adopter for me or not? So it can be mixed. I wouldn't say it goes one after another. But I cherry pick. Like, I take this part now from design thinking because that's going to give me what I need. And the point is you can't make that call until you tried some of this stuff, right? I've done design sprints in situations that didn't call for it. I was looking at the output and going, didn't work. No, let's not try this in this context again. You know, if you're not sure what kind of customer you want to approach, you send people out to interview customers for a design sprint. They come back with all sorts of stuff that you can't put into a design. So that's an example where it doesn't work. Oh, another question? I don't actually. I use the only thing I ever read was the design sprint book from Google, and then all sorts of blog posts around it on the entire design thinking realm. The only real book I read was the one from Google. Yeah, just to get my head around it. I'm going back and forth. Okay, so yeah, first the one in the back. Yeah, that's a good question. So you asked me like, what do you see patterns across successful teams? There's a couple of them, yeah. First of all, they're complete. I tend to also invest in companies in the Netherlands, a couple of them. My number one rule is this team will be able to build this business without any outside help. If all things fall apart and they're back to 2 or 3 people, they'll be able to continue. You know, so that's, you need one guy that builds the thing. One guy that's going to talk to customers or girl, and maybe a third person that complements those 2, maybe 4. But if all things come to an end and they're all together and they completely almost bankrupted the company and they've fired everyone, can they continue? Yes or no? And if it's yes, then I'll probably be more inclined to invest. But there's always one person in there at least that has some, I'd say, sales aptitude, because in the end, I believe that the overlap between a good salesman is also to be very empathic to customers. So you have like a natural inclination to really listen well to what customers are saying. And there's one person who at least cares about developing stuff, but also in such a way that it will work. And it will look good, or at least fairly good. Then I think you also mentioned something about working really hard. I don't say you have to work overly hard. I just would say just make sure that is the main thing you're doing is the company you're building. So don't try, well, you can do a side project until it calls for more than that. But if you want to run a startup or be even inside a big company and launch a new product, the core team should be completely focused on getting that done in some way or another. Rest aside, side gigs to keep the money burning, right? I've seen a lot, keep the money coming in. So I've seen a lot of people do freelance jobs for 1 day a week and then try to build the company in the other 4 days a week. That's fine. The other way around doesn't do it so much. You can't build a company 1 day a week and expect that startup to take off. If you are in that situation, just turn back into a side project kind of mode. Like, let's gather your friends for over a weekend and then see how far you can get. And build in the thought of optionality. Then you had a question? So how is this concept different from MVP? I wrote a blog post about this, I think years and years and years ago. It's still, from time to time gets quoted on several Twitter accounts, which I say your MVP is probably just an experiment. What I meant to say with that is like, if you don't know what your MVP should be, it means you have to run more experiments to find that out. And the MVP is basically the end result, the last call you make, basically. So these guys and girls, they did all this kind of like interviews. They launched these kinds of campaigns to see if they could get people to come to their landing page, and then interview again, and then found out like there was only 3 things they had to do right with the MVP. One is be transparent about the transaction cost. 2 is give people the option to go fast or cheap, which you see here. And the third one is give them a sort of track and trace kind of experience that once the money goes out of their bank account, then both themselves and the supplier can see where the money is sitting and how much money is going to be transferred. 3 features, that's all it takes. And they were building that, and that was the part basically where the bank said, okay, this works great, and we understand this is valuable for these customers, but we are cannibalizing on our own business, so we have to kill it. This is a shame. But other than that, I really liked it assembled. Like, it's really clear. There's only 3 features they had to build, and it completed the cycle. Now they could start delivering the value to customers and confirm that the customers were happy using the product. And that is basically the end stage. That's the MVP, where minimum viable product is all at the same time. Oh, one more. Let's do one or two more questions. Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, yes, I do. It's always also in that sense someone else's job. Dan Thome was here this morning. He has they wrote this book called The Corporate Startup. But what I saw is that I can come in as coach and also to start doing this part of the stakeholder management and say, what is it you're after as stakeholder? And is that realistic? So I had a situation where we were doing an experiment with both a startup and a large company, and the large company was asking the startup, listen, this is hardware. So there was certain hardware. Like, okay, so we get 5 units of this for you now for a pilot project. Once we're ready, you need to give us 50 of those machines. These were machines. And the startup founder goes, 50 of those machines? It'll take me a year to build that. Like, no, we need it in a month. Like, whoa, you want to go from that to scale like in a month? Why? So we would call up the stakeholders and say, why? Well, because our revenues are under pressure. We need to prove to everyone in the company the revenue should be replaced by a new source of revenue. Yes, but if you can't get that in a month, that's going to make you kill this project? Well, no. So, but you made that impression to the startups just now, that it's either that or nothing. Oh yeah. It's probably not that smart. No. So there's probably a middle ground here we can look for. So, but I can ask that question as a coach. Isn't that really the only way we can move forward? Startup founder or like a corporate entrepreneur is not in a position where they could do that, right? Or most often. So they'd have to be having some sort of like a diplomat, like a coach, that could go and say, really, is that the only thing you care about? And then even sometimes you can't even save the project. But that's, I think, way to fix that. One more or? No, we're done. Okay, sorry.